Hello beautiful people, and welcome back to Demystified Cooking. Okay, so eggs. I know it seems like a very simple start, but I've been doing cooking demonstrations and teaching cooking for a very long time, and probably the most common question I'm asked is, how do you poach a perfect egg? So I thought we'd address that today. We'll do a whole series on eggs because I kind of think if you're a good egg cook, everything else is going to come reasonably simply to you. So, poached eggs, first up. I know, and given that we've got history in doing steam ovens and combi steam ovens and things like that, people talk about poaching eggs in a steam oven. That's not a poached egg, it's a steamed egg, and it's a very different result and different thing, and we will do that. But an egg into a steam oven is not a poached egg, it is a steamed egg. So let's talk about poaching and getting yourself set up right for success. Okay, so first things first, fresh eggs. Fresh eggs are always best. Room temperature, I have mine at room temperature. It depends where you live. It's not going to matter too much whether you're poaching from fridge temperature or room temperature, but certainly fresh eggs. Now, it helps you to understand the way that eggs are actually, what they're made up of. So obviously you have a shell, everyone knows that, and you have a yolk, and you have an egg white, but the trick is to know that there's two parts of the egg white. So there's sort of the more solid part of the egg white that you would be familiar with. So when you crack an egg into a fry pan, or when you crack an egg into a bowl, you see sort of a faint outer edge of the solid part of the egg white. And then there's the more sort of liquidy, watery part of the egg white. And as eggs age, that liquidy, watery part becomes more prominent. Now, I'm sure some of you have experienced when you're poaching an egg, you crack an egg into the water and you get this sort of almost spider web effect from the egg white. That's because maybe the eggs are old, but also because there's too much of that watery part going into your water. And I'm going to show you a little trick or a technique to help avoid doing that. So just remember, there's sort of that extra little part of the egg white which we kind of want to avoid getting in our water. Your water should be as clear as it is at the start as when you finish. Getting yourself set up for success as far as what you need and the equipment that you need, obviously it's very simple, but a pot. And the taller the pot, the better. So I've seen people do eggs in a shallow pan. Yes, of course they're poached and that's fine and you can go, but it ends up more looking like sort of a fried egg, a poached fried egg, sort of sunny side up egg. Whereas I like that sort of encased yolk, sort of almost teardrop shape. And the teardrop shape comes from when you crack the egg first into the water, and it actually has to travel down through the water. And what happens is because the yolk's heavier, the yolk drops and the white sort of envelops it. So the longer that distance is, the better. Now, I also know that people say crack your egg into a ramekin and drop them in. You've got to whisk the water. All of those things, in my eyes, are not necessary. Now, I've taught my wife and my son how to poach eggs, and we don't use ramekins, we don't use a whisk, we don't use anything. It's actually more about getting your water and your equipment up to the right temperature. So one of the most important things to understand is that first and foremost, the water has to come to the boil. So even though we're not going to boil the egg, you need the temperature in the water, because when you add the egg, the water temperature will take a nosedive very quickly. If it hasn't come to the boil first, you're not going to get that egg white effectively sealing around the yolk, and you'll more likely get that sort of spider webbish effect. So you've got to bring your water up to a rolling boil as a starting point. Secondary to that is vinegar, just regular white vinegar. You don't need super distilled vinegar, double strength vinegar, anything like that. Vinegar does help set that white. Okay, so also a lot of people say, oh, vinegar adds a unwanted taste. Remember that in cooking, there's only two flavor enhancers. One is salt and the other is acid, and vinegar is an acid. So this will actually, in real world terms, you should have enough, but not too much, enough to just enhance the flavour of the egg. Of course, free range is best, and if you can, organic. But other than that, get yourself set up for success and your equipment right. So I don't ever really measure the water. You just want a large volume of water in a tall pot. This is almost full, bit over 3/4 full. It's probably just underneath the rivets there. And give yourself a decent amount of vinegar, right? So you want a decent amount of vinegar so you can help that white set around the yolk. Now, you can't have poached eggs without a little bit of toast. So I've just got a little bit of sourdough here, which I'm going to do in a fry pan because I actually prefer doing my toast in a fry pan. You could use butter, of course, but look, this is more about getting your poached eggs right. The only other equipment you need is a little bit of paper towel, or anything to just sort of dry the surface of the egg. You don't want your toast getting wet, effectively. And of course, you can garnish your eggs with whatever you like. We'll dive into, in later episodes of our sort of egg journey, we'll dive into making hollandaise sauce and béarnaise sauce and doing emulsification and things like that. But for the moment, let's just get you poaching your eggs right. So I'm just waiting for more water to come to the boil. So while I can see small bubbles in the base of the pot, that's great. Ideally, what I'd like to be seeing is the water on a rolling boil. Now, it's also important to understand, and as silly as it sounds, and I know it sounds basic, when you crack an egg. Okay, so what you don't want to do is crack an egg on an angle. Okay, you want to crack it on a flat surface, and the reason being is that sort of more solid together part of the egg white is easily broken, and what you want to be able to do is crack it so you can get your fingers in there and open the eggshell, obviously. But if you crack it on an angle and you crack it too hard and you go through that membrane of that egg white, then that egg white becomes more of that liquid egg white, that more spiderwebby egg white. So that's what we're trying to avoid, right? We want to have nice, even, sort of a nice, even distribution of the egg white, rather than that sort of spiderweb effect, that real encompassing or encasing of the yolk. So really the key takeaways, the most important thing is make sure that the egg has come, the water has come up to a rolling boil. It's really, really important. It's the step that I think everyone misses. And then go about cracking your egg. So crack your egg on a flat surface, and what you'll also see is that I'm going to open the egg really close to the surface of the water. We don't want it drop from a height because the likelihood of it breaking on the way down is pretty high. So you don't want to crack an egg and drop it from up here. You want to be as close to the water as possible. So if you are inclined to, you can use a ramekin. Okay, that's cool. The difficulty with the ramekin is you get that watery part of the egg white in the ramekin. Okay, so what I'm looking to do is avoid that watery part. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do before I actually do it, because it kind of happens pretty quick. So I'm going to crack the egg, open it really close to the surface, and as soon as I see the yolk start to come out, I'm actually going to close the shell where I've cracked it. So I'm going to sort of open it and then close it. And what I'm going to do, and I'll show you afterwards, is I'll encase I'll capture that part of the egg white that I don't want in my water. So yeah, it all sounds much more complicated than it actually is. It's a very simple technique. And usually you want to poach your eggs. So when we're actually poaching the eggs, so the actual poaching of the eggs, we actually want to drop the temperature of the water down when the poaching happens. Okay, so while yes, we want to bring it up to the boil, and you can see now it's starting to get a bit of temp in there. Once the eggs are in, we want to turn the temperature down to a medium-ish heat. So on most induction cooktops, I would say sort of setting 5-ish, and anywhere between sort of 3 and 4 minutes. The reason that I don't do the whirlpool, for want of a better term, is because you can only effectively get any benefit from a whirlpool by doing one egg at a time. And I'm yet to meet people that go, oh yeah, I'll just have one single egg. right? So I'm looking to do 2 perfectly poached eggs. So I've got a rolling boil now, which is kind of perfect. So I'll just drop it back just one, just so it's not going too hard, but I've certainly got some movement in the water, which is what I want. And now we'll go about cracking our eggs. So you'll sort of see I'll open and then close. It takes a little bit of practice, but nonetheless, practice makes perfect with any of these things. So I've cracked the egg. I'm just gonna close to the surface of the water, open, then close. And I'll show you what's left once I've done the second one. And this is about just getting that a little bit of speed into your egg. So I've got my poached eggs in there and I've got perfect teardrops. So what I'll try and show you now, if I can, is show you what's left in the egg. So I've got this, which is this watery part of the egg white, right? And that's what gives that spider web effect to when you're poaching eggs, which is what we're trying to avoid, right? So we've got all this watery stuff coming out of the egg, which is not in my water. So my water is very clear and clean at the moment, which is exactly how I want it. So yeah, that's the trick and the technique, is that sort of very fast open and then close. And once they've sort of started to set, you can get in there with a spoon and just make sure they're not caught on the bottom. If you've got a nice flat fry pan, or saucepan I should say, if you've got a nice flat saucepan, they shouldn't catch on the bottom. And like I say, just turn it down just until you see small bubbles on the base of the pot, and you should be, with any luck, having perfectly poached eggs. Now in a pot this size, you could effectively do like 7, 8, let's say 8 eggs. So enough for 4 portions. The only trick is once you start adding volume, you've got to make sure that you're maintaining enough temperature in the water to sort of set that yolk. So I would suggest that once you add, let's say 3 or 4 eggs, maybe you just bump the temperature up 1 or 2 on your cooktop, and even on your gas cooktop, just turn it up fractionally. And that just will account for the drop in temperature that the eggs are gonna impact on the water itself. Okay, so yeah, bigger pot, more water, vinegar is fine. Bring it up to the water, open and close very close to the surface of the water, so you're not getting this sort of liquid part of the egg white in your water. And I'll show you this water once I'm finished cooking too. You'll see it's crystal clear. And what you can also do in this scenario is that if someone isn't quite ready for breakfast, you can certainly just turn this water off and come back and use it again a little bit later, because it's actually not dirty. There's no floating egg white in my water. I've got a few little, maybe what you would term sort of stringy bits coming off my eggs, but nonetheless, the best example I can give you is, I mean, we're not quite there yet, but we've got a beautiful teardrop shape, which is exactly what we aimed for. And it's all really about just getting your water temperature right. My toast, crispy bit of toast, and we'll give these eggs, like I say, the best part of sort of 3.5 to 4 minutes is where you want to be for your poached eggs. And yeah, the older the eggs are, the more liquid white you're going to have. But nonetheless, poaching eggs is a relatively easy proposition. Like anything, practice makes perfect. But yeah, be patient with it, take your time. Just remember the key elements of getting your water up to the boil first. It has to boil. I think probably, aside from anything else, even if you get a bit of spider webbing, as far as the egg white goes, I wouldn't concern yourself too much with that. I think the real main takeaway is if you get your water up to the boil, then you're gonna end up with really good poached eggs, time and time again. And a lot of this is about just consistency. So yeah, don't worry about ramekins, don't worry about whirlpools. Don't season the water, it doesn't need any salt in there. Salt does make eggs fractionally tough and rubbery. So yeah, just be patient with it. And like I say, about 3.5, 4 minutes is plenty. And I just test by just touching the egg. So it should just have a little bit of give. The white should be set. And then just set it onto your paper towel, just to dry it out. A slotted spoon is actually best for this, but use whatever you've got to hand. Half of the idea behind this cooking channel too is we're not trying to get overly complicated with any equipment we're using. We're just using, you know, regular household equipment. So at this stage, what I will do is I will season them. So just a little bit of salt on your eggs, and they've had a chance to sort of dry out, if you like, on the surface there. And then I have, and you can see that the first one was a much better teardrop. We had perfect water temperature at the start. The water temperature probably dropped just a fraction, but nonetheless, we have perfect poached eggs. Just to finish off, a little bit of chives, and effectively there you have it. Like, I know it seems simple, but a lot of people ask me still to this day how to poach a perfect egg. So there you have it, perfect poached eggs. It's all about water temperature. It's all about making sure it comes to the boil, and it's all about cracking it close to the surface and capturing that more liquid-based egg white. And as you can see, my water is crystal clear, hasn't got any mess in it. I will still wash it, of course, but nonetheless, like, that's it. Perfect poached eggs. Happy cooking, everyone. Hope to see you next time when we'll do more about eggs and more egg cookery.